The last message. Marcus didn't notice the exact moment things began to change. There was no argument, no dramatic shift, no single event he could point to and say, that's when everything started going wrong. Instead, it happened quietly. So quietly that, at first, it didn't feel like anything at all. Jason had always been a constant in Marcus's life. Not just a friend, something deeper than that. The kind of bond built over years of shared experiences, late-night conversations, mistakes they learned from together, and moments that didn't need to be explained. They didn't check on each other every day. They didn't need to. There was an understanding between them that felt solid, permanent. Or at least, that's what Marcus believed. At first, the changes were small. Small enough to ignore. Jason took a little longer to respond to messages. Calls ended quicker than usual. Plans started getting postponed, then quietly canceled. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. Just small shifts. Marcus noticed, but didn't question it. Because people get busy. Life changes. That explanation made sense. And when something makes sense, you don't look deeper. You accept it. Nina didn't. She never said anything directly, but Marcus could feel it. Whenever Jason's name came up, there was always a pause. A small delay before she responded. It was subtle. So subtle that Marcus could have easily dismissed it. But it happened more than once. And repetition turns subtle things into patterns. Still, Marcus ignored it. Because questioning it would mean questioning both of them. And he trusted both of them too much to do that. Until Tuesday. It should have been a normal day. Nothing special. Nothing memorable. But when Marcus tried to think back on it later, something felt off. He could remember waking up. He could remember leaving the apartment. But the middle of the day felt incomplete. Not gone. Just unclear. Like trying to recall a dream that fades the moment you focus on it. The more he tried to remember, the less it made sense. At first, he brushed it off. Everyone forgets things. Days blend together. It happens. But then Nina mentioned it. Casually. Like it didn't matter. Jason stopped by Tuesday, she said one evening. Marcus looked up. Tuesday? Yeah, she said. Just for a bit. Marcus frowned slightly. He tried to picture it. Jason standing in the apartment. A conversation. A moment. Anything. But nothing came. No image. No sound. No memory. Just a blank space. That feeling stayed with him longer than he expected. Because forgetting something small is normal. But forgetting something that should matter? That's different. Still, Marcus didn't push it. He let it go. Because letting it go was easier than questioning it. That night, Marcus lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The room was quiet. Too quiet. Then his phone lit up. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. But something made him open the message. Ask about last Tuesday. Marcus sat up slowly. The words weren't threatening. They weren't emotional. But they felt precise. Like someone knew exactly what to say to get his attention. He read it again. And again. Then slowly turned his head toward Nina. She was asleep. Her breathing steady. Her face calm. Nothing about her suggested anything was wrong. For a moment, Marcus considered waking her up. Asking her right then. But something stopped him. Because deep down, he understood something important. Some questions don't just give answers. They change everything. The next morning, Marcus tried to act normal. At breakfast, he kept his tone casual. Jason came by Tuesday, right? Nina didn't hesitate. Yeah. Too quick. Too smooth. Marcus nodded slightly. What did you guys do? Nothing much, she said. He just stopped by. Again. Simple. Clean. Controlled. Marcus watched her carefully. Her expression didn't change. Her tone stayed calm. But something didn't match. It wasn't obvious. But it was there. Like a detail just slightly out of place. Later that day, Marcus called Jason. The phone rang longer than usual. Long enough for Marcus to notice. Long enough for him to wonder if Jason was even going to answer. Finally. Hey. Jason's voice sounded normal, but not fully present. You've been hard to reach, Marcus said. A pause. Yeah, just busy. Marcus leaned back slightly. Busy with what? Another pause. Longer this time. Just stuff. Marcus didn't respond immediately. Because that wasn't how Jason used to talk. They used to talk about everything. Now even simple questions felt like they were being avoided. The call ended shortly after. No real conversation. No real connection. Just silence. And that silence stayed with Marcus longer than anything Jason had said. That evening, Marcus came home earlier than usual. The apartment looked the same. Everything was where it should be. But something felt different. Not visibly, but internally. Like the atmosphere had shifted. Nina was sitting on the couch. The TV was on. But she wasn't really watching it. Marcus stepped inside and paused. Then he saw it. Jason's jacket. Folded neatly on a chair. Marcus stopped walking. His eyes fixed on it. Then he looked at Nina. He was here today, he asked. Nina glanced at the jacket. Yeah, just for a bit. For a bit. Yeah. Short answers. Again. Marcus nodded slowly. But something inside him tightened. Because answers that come too easily often hide something deeper. Dinner was quiet. Conversation felt forced. Like both of them were speaking just enough to fill the space, but not enough to say anything real. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Every detail replayed in his mind. The message. Jason's voice. Nina's responses. The missing memory. The jacket. Individually, they meant nothing. But together, they formed something he couldn't ignore anymore. At 2:17 a.m., his phone lit up again. Unknown number. Marcus grabbed it immediately. You're not seeing everything. Another message appeared. Look closer. Then, check her phone. Marcus stared at the screen. His heart steady. His mind racing. Slowly, he turned his head toward Nina. She was still asleep. Peaceful. Unaware. For a long time, Marcus didn't move. Because he understood something clearly now. Once he crossed this line, there would be no going back. But not crossing it didn't mean things would stay the same. It only meant he would stay in the dark. Marcus looked back at his phone. Then at Nina. Then back at the message. And for the first time since all of this started, he stopped hesitating. He made a decision. Marcus didn't sleep much after that. Not because he was afraid, but because once a question settles in your mind the way that one had, rest becomes impossible. He kept replaying everything. The message. Jason's voice. Nina's answers. The missing Tuesday. The jacket. Each piece alone felt small. But together, they formed something he couldn't ignore anymore. By morning, Marcus had already made his decision. He wasn't going to ask more questions. Not yet. He was going to watch. Because sometimes, the truth doesn't appear when you chase it. It appears when you stop pretending not to see. The day moved slowly. Marcus went through the motions. He spoke when spoken to. He responded when needed. But inside, everything had shifted. He wasn't living his day. He was observing it. That evening, Nina moved around the apartment like nothing had changed. She cooked. She cleaned. She spoke normally. But Marcus noticed everything now. The slight pauses. The moments where her attention drifted. The way she avoided eye contact just a second too long. Small things. But small things repeated become patterns. And patterns create meaning. Dinner was quiet. Not uncomfortable. Just distant. Like two people sharing a space instead of a connection. Afterward, Nina stood up. I'm going to shower, she said. Marcus nodded. Okay. Her tone was normal. Too normal. He listened as the bathroom door closed. Then the sound of running water filled the apartment. Marcus sat still for a moment, his heart steady, his thoughts clear. He stood up slowly, walked into the bedroom. Nina's phone was on the nightstand, unlocked. That detail alone felt heavy, like a door left slightly open. Marcus picked it up. His hands didn't shake. He wasn't nervous. He was focused. He opened the messages. At first, nothing stood out. Regular conversations. Friends. Family. Nothing unusual. Then he slowed down. Because the truth isn't always obvious. Sometimes it hides in how things are said, not just what is said. He started noticing patterns. Messages that felt incomplete. Short replies that ended conversations too quickly. Careful wording. Controlled tone. Conversations that seemed to avoid something instead of express it. Marcus scrolled slowly. His eyes moving, but his mind doing something deeper. He wasn't just reading. He was feeling the space between the words. And that's where it was. Not a clear betrayal. Not a dramatic confession. But something hidden. Something intentionally left unsaid. The bathroom door opened. Marcus placed the phone back instantly. By the time Nina stepped into the room, his hands were at his sides. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her voice calm. But not fully. Marcus turned toward her. And for the first time, something in his expression had changed. Not anger. Not confusion. Awareness. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked quietly. Nina froze for a second. Barely noticeable. But enough. "What do you mean?" she said. Marcus didn't move. "You know what I mean." Silence filled the room. It wasn't empty. It was heavy. The kind of silence that forces truth to the surface. But Nina didn't speak right away. She looked at him. Measuring something. Choosing something. "I didn't think it mattered," she said finally. Marcus let out a slow breath. "It always matters." Nina didn't respond. And that silence said more than anything else could. That night, the space between them grew. Not physically, but emotionally. They were in the same apartment. The same rooms. But it felt like there was distance between them that couldn't be measured. Marcus didn't ask more questions. Because he already knew something important. The truth wasn't going to be given easily. Hours passed. The night settled in. And then, a knock at the door. Marcus stood up. Walked to it. Opened it. Jason stood there. For a moment, no one spoke. The tension was immediate. Not loud. Not explosive. But present. "You already think you know something," Jason said. Marcus stepped aside slightly. "Then explain it." Jason walked in. Slowly. Carefully. His eyes moved from Marcus to Nina, then back again. "You don't have the full picture," he said. Marcus nodded. "Then give it to me." Jason hesitated. And that hesitation said everything. Not because he didn't know what to say, but because he was deciding how much to say. "It's not what you think," he said finally. Marcus let out a quiet laugh. Not amused. Just empty. That's what people say when it is. Nina stepped forward. "Stop," she said softly. But Marcus didn't look at her. He was watching Jason. Waiting. Giving him the chance to finish. To explain. To make things clear. But Jason didn't. He stayed silent. And that silence was louder than anything else in the room. Because incomplete truth feels worse than a lie. A lie can be confronted. A lie can be exposed. But something unfinished. Something partial. It stays in your mind. It grows. Jason looked at Marcus again. "You're missing context," he said. Marcus nodded slowly. "Then give it to me." Another pause. Longer this time. But again. Nothing. No explanation. No clarity. Just more space. More silence. More distance. Nina looked between them. But didn't speak. And that made everything worse. Because if there had been something simple to say, she would have said it. Jason stepped back slightly. "This isn't the way you think it is," he said. Marcus didn't respond. Because at this point, it didn't. What mattered was how it felt. And what it felt like was distance, was avoidance, was something being kept from him. Jason left shortly after. No resolution. No answers. Just the door closing behind him. And silence returning to the apartment. Marcus stood still. Not angry. Not emotional. Just aware. Nina finally spoke. "You're overthinking this," she said. Marcus shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "I'm finally thinking about it." That was the difference. Before, he had accepted everything. Now, he was seeing it. Really seeing it. And once you see something clearly, you can't go back to not seeing it. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. Not because he was restless, but because his mind had already moved forward. He wasn't trying to figure out if something was wrong anymore. He already knew. The only question left was, how deep did it go? And why hadn't they told him? As the night stretched on, Marcus sat in silence. Waiting. Thinking. Understanding something that felt heavier with every passing minute. Sometimes people don't lie to you. They just never tell you the full truth. And that's enough to break everything. Marcus didn't wake up the next morning feeling confused. He didn't wake up angry either. What he felt was something quieter. Something heavier. Clarity. Not full clarity, he still didn't know every detail, but enough to understand one thing. Something had already been broken long before he noticed it. And now, all that was left was to see it completely. The apartment felt different that morning. Not physically. Everything was still in its place. But the atmosphere had changed. Like something invisible had shifted between him and Nina, creating distance that hadn't been there before. She moved around like everything was normal. Made coffee. Checked her phone. Spoke when necessary. But Marcus noticed something now that he hadn't allowed himself to see before. She was careful. Not obviously. Not in a way that would stand out to anyone else. But once you notice it, you can't unsee it. Every word measured. Every pause controlled. Every reaction slightly delayed. It wasn't natural. It was managed. Marcus didn't say anything right away. Because he understood something important now. The truth wasn't going to come from casual conversation. It had to be pulled out. Not aggressively. Not emotionally. But directly. He waited until the moment felt unavoidable. "Nina," he said. She looked up. "Yeah." Marcus held her gaze. "Tell me everything." No anger. No raised voice. Just certainty. For a brief moment, something in her expression changed. A crack. Small. But real. "What do you mean?" she asked. Marcus didn't move. "You know what I mean." Silence. The kind that stretches longer than it should. The kind that forces a decision. And in that silence, Marcus realized something clearly. If the truth were simple, it would have already been said. Nina exhaled slowly. Then sat down. That alone said more than words. Because sitting down meant she wasn't going to avoid it anymore. "I didn't want to make it bigger than it was," she said quietly. Marcus shook his head. "It's already bigger than it should be." Another pause. Longer this time. Then finally, she spoke. Not in one sentence. Not in one clean explanation. But in pieces. Fragments. Moments that didn't feel important at the time. Conversations that seemed harmless. Situations that felt small when they happened, but grew over time. Jason had been coming by more often. At first, it was casual. Just stopping by. Talking. Spending time. Marcus wasn't always there. And, because Marcus trusted both of them, it never felt like something that needed to be mentioned. At least, not at first. But then it became more frequent. More consistent. More intentional. Not necessarily something wrong. Not something clear. Just something that slowly crossed a line neither of them acknowledged out loud. Marcus listened. He didn't interrupt. Didn't react. Because what she was saying wasn't explosive. It wasn't betrayal in the way people imagine it. It was worse. It was quiet. Gradual. Something that happened over time without anyone stopping it. And Tuesday, Marcus asked finally. Nina hesitated. He came over, she said. Marcus waited. That's it, he asked. Another pause. We talked, she said. About what? Nina looked down briefly. About you, she said. That made Marcus pause. About me. She nodded. He said you've been distant, she said. That you've changed. Marcus let out a quiet breath. And you agreed? Nina didn't answer immediately. And that silence gave him his answer. The room felt heavier. Not because of what was said, but because of what it meant. You could have told me, Marcus said. Nina looked up. I didn't think it would turn into this. Marcus nodded slowly. That's the problem, he said. Things don't turn into something overnight. They build. And you let it. Nina didn't respond. Because there was nothing to say. That night, everything felt final, even though nothing dramatic had happened. No shouting. No breakdown. Just understanding. And sometimes, understanding hurts more than anything else. Hours later, there was another knock at the door. Marcus already knew who it was. He opened it. Jason stood there again. But this time, something was different. Not in Jason. In Marcus. There was no confusion anymore. No searching. No questioning. Just clarity. Jason stepped inside slowly. He looked between Marcus and Nina. Like he was trying to read something in the room. You talked, he said. Marcus nodded. Yeah. Jason exhaled. Good, he said. Marcus studied him for a moment. Then say it clearly, Marcus said. Jason frowned slightly. Say what? The truth, Marcus replied. Jason hesitated. Then shook his head slightly. It's not that simple. Marcus gave a small nod. It never is. Silence filled the space again. But this time, it felt different. Less tense. More final. Jason finally spoke. We didn't plan anything, he said. It just happened. Marcus didn't react. Because he already understood. That's how these things always happen. Not suddenly. Not intentionally. But slowly. Through moments that feel harmless at first. Through lines that aren't clearly defined until they're already crossed. I wasn't trying to hide anything, Jason continued. Marcus looked at him. You didn't have to, he said. You just didn't tell me. And that was the truth. Not a lie. Not a betrayal in the obvious sense. Just absence. Absence of honesty. Absence of clarity. Absence of respect for what their friendship had been. Nina looked at Marcus. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said. Marcus nodded. I know. And he meant it. That was the hardest part. They didn't wake up one day and decide to hurt him. They just didn't stop things when they should have. And sometimes. That's enough. Marcus stood there for a long moment. Looking at both of them. Not angry. Not emotional. Just done. Jason spoke again. We can fix this, he said. Marcus shook his head slightly. No, he said. Not harsh. Not aggressive. Just certain. Some things don't get fixed, Marcus continued. They just end. Silence. No one argued. Because deep down, they all knew it was true. Marcus walked toward the door. Slowly. Deliberately. Nina's voice came from behind him. Where are you going? Marcus paused. His hand resting on the door. He didn't turn around immediately. Because turning around would make it harder. I'm not staying in something that already ended, he said. Then he opened the door. Stepped out. And didn't look back. Not because he didn't care. But because caring was the reason he had to leave. Outside, the air felt different. Cooler. Quieter. Clearer. Marcus stood there for a moment, letting everything settle. And in that moment, he understood something he hadn't fully realized before. The hardest part of losing people isn't the moment they leave. It's realizing they were already gone, long before you noticed. Marcus took a step forward, then another. And for the first time in a while, he didn't feel confused. He didn't feel uncertain. He just felt free.